thing that does keep coming up is the idea of doing something to talk about the disproportionate minority contact that we have in the county. We've talked about, you know, we want to do something. The question is, what do you do? I mean, is the board wanting to move forward with that, and could we do some kind of RFP, or could we get some help from somebody to do something, or?
I think that, you know, what I was envisioning today was everyone throws ideas out, and then I think that over the next several weeks, months, we prioritize that and figure out where our dollars are. You know, disproportionate minority contact is more important than securing the courthouse further, or more space for whatever, or, you know, or a roof, or, you know, I mean, it's like, that's what I think you have to do.
And I don't know what it costs. I mean, I think there's a big range of costs. I think you can spend very little money, you can spend a lot. Obviously, we don't have a lot.
I think we're going to generate a pretty long list of needs, and we tried to solve a lot of those needs with the proposal. Majority of the voters obviously identified that there is concern about the space needs of our courthouse and our jail, but it takes 60%. And so, you know, so now it's kind of like we're back to the drawing board. And, you know, as we look at disproportionate contact or whatever our priorities are, I think we just have to throw out and think about what the long list of needs are. I mean, you know, we have to remind ourselves that, I mean, our very first responsibility, as you look at the Iowa Code and you look at what the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Supervisors are, they are for the safety, health, and welfare of our citizens. And so, if we're concerned about the safety, health, and welfare not only of our citizens, but our employees and the people that use the courthouse and the people that use the jail, you know, does that rise higher up than some of the other things? So, you know, that's, to me, is where we need to start, and that is, you know, obviously building a facility to address all of the things that we, over the last 12 plus years, have identified, people that were for, people that were against, all of these folks that were a part of that decision making, by the way. They don't want it under one building at the cost that we proposed. So now where do we go? And that's what I think this idea of a work session was. Okay, where do we go from here? Let's list all the things. Do you want to invest a significant amount of money? A significant amount of money, $5–10 million is a significant amount of money. Do you want to put that into two buildings that in 10 or 20 years you don't want there? Does that make a lot of sense? I mean, that's the conversation that I think we're going to have to talk about here. But we don't have the money to do a whole lot of anything unless you want to put it back on the ballot. And residents have said to us, not 60%.
I do think we have to get down to just to stabilize the jail and courthouse. What money are we talking about? Now,
Pretty expensive.
I think we're looking at somewhere, if I'm adding up everything listed in the jail, and I'm over 3 million, approaching 5. But, I mean, and so the courthouse, I've got boilers, ongoing moisture problem, I've got a secure entrance, Americans with Disability Act, courtrooms, county attorney, and storage. All right, so.
Clerk's office.
Clerk, okay. So, Janet, various people have suggested we take your office and move it to the 3rd floor over here. That's not without expense. People don't realize the 3rd floor isn't built out. So, at one point we had some estimates to build that. It's just bare metal beams. But that's out on the table far enough that people have talked about. We move you out and we take your office space and turn it into courtrooms. How do you see that working at all? I mean, how do you see it working?
Right, not very well. Our attorneys are at the courthouse on a regular basis. It would mean that our attorneys were having to drive or somehow get to the courthouse, and the cost of that. I mean, it would be one thing if we were across the street or close enough to walk on a regular basis, especially with the train track there. That's not really something that's very doable. I think it's a really inefficient location for the county attorney's office in terms of being able to get to the courthouse, because really it's scheduled at 9, there's another hearing at 10:30. Do they go
And they're going back and forth.
Back and
They're on, yeah.
forth, right, is that a good use of time? I mean, so you're, some of the higher paid attorney, or employees in the county are spending a lot of their time just traveling back and forth. I think another option might be to look at, is there some place closer that we can rent for additional space for the county attorney practice? If we were to move
Let's
out.
say that that happened, all the shuffling of the university, we were able to buy or rent or long-term lease a ground floors in the 2-block radius, I mean, really, really tight, 1-block radius. How much courtroom could we get if we kicked you out?
You could probably put in another couple of courtrooms. I would I think, I mean, one of the things is you have to look at trying to make that courthouse ADA accessible. To do that, you're gonna have to change the entrance and change it probably to the south side, what is now the break room, which means you're gonna have to use some of the space down there. The other thing that's certainly missing in the courthouse is any place for attorneys to meet with their clients, any kind of space for conference rooms, mediation rooms. I mean, it's all, we need additional, definitely need additional jury rooms. So maybe 2 smaller courtrooms, I'm not sure, maybe one
If we
bigger
kicked
one.
you out,
and
we
one
might
smaller
get
one.
2,
We might.
but still not address any of the entrance. So at one time, someone had a plan, and I actually talked to you about it 4 years ago before I was a supervisor, that you could put a courthouse annex directly south of the building, and you would punch through the break room as your entry into the main courthouse, and some sort of annex there, that nobody would be removed from that area. It would just gain more space for the clerk and the storage and the county attorney and courtroom space with a secure ADA entrance, and then come through the break room to the rest of the courthouse. When that discussion was out there, did any dollar amount get applied to that?
I think when we looked at it, it was more, if we were to get the GSA building and we were to vacate Harrison Street, what could we build there? But that was just part of the whole discussion of the Home Justice Center proposal, or looking at, you know, even at the time we were looking at maybe probably building separately. I mean, it's gonna be expensive.
But
It's
a
not like
courthouse
something-
annex building like 2/3 of HHS, nobody ever put a dollar figure to
Well,
that.
we have the dollar figure from the current proposal, which was about 2/3 of the cost of the proposal was court-related versus jail, is that right, Dwight?
Yes.
So if you were gonna do that much, and maybe you wouldn't be doing quite that much, but if you're gonna do that much, you could reasonably expect that you're talking $25 to $30 million.
So $25 to $30 million to address everything outside of the jail.
Right. Just in the courthouse.
Right, and we were using the courthouse, so. Yeah, because I mean, it's like what we've said all along, is we're using the courthouse is, one, there is no market for selling, and 2, reusing it, that would be big space. We could reuse functions and not have to, it would just be a smaller building.
What happens if we just fix the boilers, figure out what's going on with your moisture? We know the jail inspector is gonna start pushing harder on the jail. So what happens with the courthouse? This email from the court administrator, I mean,
Well, I think, out of secondary roads, we should probably work to figure out some storage system. I think both Carolyn's and then Barb Krigolo are here too. I think we can try to figure out something so that we aren't having those records stored as high, because that's the concern with the new storage, is being able to get up to those records.
I
with the
thought we
additional
already
storage.
decided this, that we were gonna put election stuff that nobody needs at the top.
It's still, you know, you're looking at 12-foot height at the top, and at the election, I don't know if they'll take everything or not, but, you know, they still have access to, they'll clear up as high as they want.
I think we can fix that
Yeah,
part.
I mean, I think.
Because I know elections, because they've been in elections, haven't had time to deal with this. But when we talked about this before with your own concerns, we decided to put all those election stuff on the top shelves.
Stuff you have to keep, but nobody really.
But
gets
nobody will
access.
ever look at
Right.
again.
So I think that we can deal with probably the secondary roads, storage issues without a new structure. I think that that building behind the courthouse, if you look at it, it just is not in good shape. I think that kind of that's something that's gonna need to be looked at in the near future, just because structurally, it's an old building, it's kind of crumbling, it's not, it's kind of lived past its
That's where our
useful
boilers
lifetime,
are.
so.
I mean, all
Right.
the
Yeah.
So,
heating and
yeah.
cooling comes from that building.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's something, and this is not convenient for the court then, for the same reason it would be convenient for us, but it's like third floor of the HHS building for storage. It's not great, and I'm sure Barb is sitting in the back, like, yes, like going, you know, because it's a multiple times a day going out to that storage unit behind the courthouse. It's like part of their office, because structurally, the clerk of court's office couldn't hold all of the shelves it had. Now, come next year, we'll probably be going to the electronic data management system, but that's only gonna be going forward. It's not gonna get rid of any of the current paper files. So while the space needs for storage in the future may not be as great, that we're gonna still have all of the files that we currently have. And, you know, much as our local people might wanna do more scanning, the money comes from the state, and frankly, the budget for the judicial department has not been increasing very much, and so that's why we were, you know, they had furlough days, they cut court reporters, and I think that's part of the reason we're so far behind is because of the budget cuts at the judicial department. So having them spend money on scanning versus having the employees keep the offices open is the decision they've had to make. And so, you know, and it certainly isn't the local people who've been able to make that decision. So the records are there.
And obviously, we can only build so much space without public approval.
Yeah.
We can spend $1.2 million.
Right.
We're gonna spend more than that, the public has to vote and say yes. I realize that's not the way it is in cities. Cities can essentially do anything they want, the county still plays by the rule that you have to go to the public. Public said no, so.
Well, as far as moving storage to the third floor, you seriously have to have somebody come in, engineer-wise, and look for a square footage to build it. Because I would be willing to bet it's not rated for that much.
I've got that concern of the present location.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not good for it, and the higher you go, that square foot load's not there, something's gonna collapse.
Even, I would say even the storage, at Mommy's building is probably exceeded too in quite a few places.
And as we've noted again last week in our space needs discussion, building more space, your argument, John, downtown, particularly for storage, gets mighty expensive versus the land we have a burned out secondary roads facility. Do we not just address a lot of our storage issues out there? And yeah, it's incredibly more inconvenient. This whole issue is incredibly more inconvenient after what happened last Tuesday. Not only more inconvenient in the long run, a whole lot more expensive. But, you know, that's what people decide. So, you know, I think you're starting to hear what the needs are in growing county. And as we continue to talk about the needs for growing county, how expensive is it going to be to address these issues?
So I think I heard that if we do everything we need to do in the jail, it would probably trigger the jail inspector to actually lower our bed numbers.
It's possible, it depends on what exactly you end up doing. I mean, if we just change the locks and we got the control center and leave it at that, I think we'll be fine.
That's the 1.6 million.
Yeah,
Roughly,
yeah, but if you start trying to reconfigure the cell blocks to make them into pods or something like that, we're gonna run into trouble space-wise.
So you think if we just do the locks and stabilize the water and sewer and the roof and put new toilets in, we're not gonna lose jail beds, but if we try to reconfigure the cells,
Well, that's my hope. I don't think we can guarantee that, and honestly, I don't think you're gonna get the jail inspector to go on records predicting what he's gonna do based on.
Until he sees it.
Until he sees it.
how much rearranging can we do at the courthouse until we trigger Americans with Disabilities Act? And Iowa City fire codes?
Changing the boilers isn't gonna make a difference. I mean, I don't think there's room in there to do a whole lot. I mean, I think started to, I'd have to check if we were completely dig up the first floor, maybe the county attorney's office out of there.
And start putting in courtrooms.
Courtrooms, I'll have to check, I couldn't say. I mean, it's because of the age of the building and what the limitations are, but I think if we were to start to do that, we'd wanna do that anyway, whether we're required to or not.
Sure.
You know, I mean, I can't see that you're gonna wanna have courtrooms on the first floor that aren't accessible.
Your offices are so, I mean, I don't think people understand how small your offices actually are and how many people are actually squeezed in there. I mean, it's just like going out to a place where you have, you know,
Couple of our closets.
yeah, I mean, they're just, it's a desk next to a desk, and there's no extra room. So it's not like we're gonna gain, I mean, I think two courtrooms frankly is generous. I don't know if there's two courtrooms worth of
Well, you
space
also
there.
have space for the judges.
I don't think there is that much there, cause you guys are so tightly packed. I mean, we move you out, but we don't gain a lot
The
by
other
moving
thing,
you out.
the other thing is, the more you tear out, the more you'll be subject to all the new codes. So, you know, anything you remodel basically has to be upgraded to the latest rate.
So,
And, I do think, you know, as we're looking at things, I think there's some minor things that are gonna cost money, but like making the jury boxes, ADA, wheelchair accessible. I mean, I think that there's things that if we are not redoing the courthouse, that we need to just invest the money in to do those. And it may take out some of the space for seating and things like that. I mean, I think the courtrooms are gonna change because of that, but I think that's something we just need to be looking at putting the money into if we're not gonna have new court facilities too. So, that, I think also we really need to look at, if we're not gonna have a new court facility, and if we're gonna, you know, do any kind of remodeling to get more courtrooms in, we need to also put in the security. I mean, it's kind of like immediately, people were saying to me, so when are we gonna get our metal detectors? And it's kind of like, there's no place to put those, so if we start to put in those, you know, move the county turns off, try to put in 2 courtrooms, not only are we gonna have to try to get ADA accessible, but we need to put in security, it just needs to be.
Well, and it could get back to that, you know, what are the, again, as we generate this list, what are the immediate needs? You know, basically your now for the next couple of years, and then how are you gonna handle those kind of things? How much investment do you wanna make into a facility if you don't wanna keep it long-term? I mean, those are the kind of things I think we need to hear now. Probably the courthouse security committee needs to, I would think, regenerate Plan B, which has been out there since about, I don't know, 2002 or 3, that we all wrote at one point.
is that my responsibility to call
That's
that
yours
meeting?
now, yeah.
Who calls it?
I think Judge Russell actually.
Yeah, the
they'll-
chairperson,
usually-
They're about twice a year.
Yeah,
yeah,
Okay, but I don't have to call it, I just have to go.
you're the one
Okay.
yeah.
on the committee.
So there hasn't been one since I've been chair.
Well, we wrote a Plan A and a Plan B. We addressed almost all the things on Plan A as far as, you know, some of the locking
Keypads.
system, keypads, that kind of thing. Plan B was the secure entranceway. I mean, those are the kind of things I think we need to hear from. If you only had so much money and you only had a year or 2, what would you put on that list?
Yeah.
Because, you know, looking at the results of the election, there's no desire, at least it's a pretty tough desire to get 60% of folks wanting to put big dollars into a project. So,
Even with the bond, we can only scrape together $3 or $4 million.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the priority, I mean, boiler is number 1 priority. No question, we need to have heat or that building isn't gonna function next year. But then I think we do need to look at security, we need to look at putting in a metal detector, we need to look at making the courtrooms and my office ADA accessible, which may mean putting in a whole new floor on the third of the office so that, or putting in some kind of a ramp or
Ramp
something
system.
like that. So I think those are the things that need to be kind of short-term, boiler number 1, the other ones in the next couple of years. I mean, I just think that the security is an issue, ADA accessibility are issues that we just need to address, they just can't be put off for another 20 years.
So, short of at one time David Kemp, who was the old facilities director, told me that he thought something like HHS, but 2/3 of that, go next to the courthouse as an annex. Short of some plan like that, which you threw out 25 million, I'm not clear that, but we can figure that out. Short of that, I mean, John had proposed, the school district use these trailers for classrooms. Can these trailers be used for courtrooms? Have you ever seen that done somewhere?
No, I would have to look. I mean, because then you get into the whole security thing, so if you have a separate one, then you have to have a deputy basically stationed there, because it's not something that they can see, so keep in mind that cost. I don't know what it would look like.
Well, it wouldn't have to be, you wouldn't have to use them for courtrooms, you could use them to house, like, some of your office space, some of the other office space, and use the courthouse for still the courtrooms. So these spaces would only be accessible by your staff, by the staff who operates it. It's not gonna be, because otherwise, then you do have I think, a larger security.
You weren't proposing them for courtrooms, but more for office
More
space.
for office space, so I mean, I think that would actually lessen the cost, because office space, I think, is cheaper to build than a secure facility where we have to bring inmates in and out, we have to, or in that fashion.
But this would be on the lawn, or on the parking
Yeah,
strip somewhere, in,
Yeah, within
and
close
the two
proximity,
are close proximity.
close proximity of the current courthouse.
Lonnie, I talked to Lonnie about this, there are changes happening in the neighborhood. Midwest One is building a multi-story building with 560 parking spots. I don't know where that is, but we've always, at least I have always, thought that the county didn't need to be in the business of parking, that we could either lease or own parking with the city in conjunction with them and some sort of ramp. So you've got that going on at Midwest One over at Saban Elementary School, old Saban School. And then Social Security moved out of the post office because GSA was charging them too high of rent. And pending is the post office moving out of the post office. Now, according to the post office, they're moving out. According to GSA, they're still in negotiations. But GSA apparently is charging higher rents, and their own governmental entities are moving out of their space. In the past, GSA never sold land. Although we've been talking to them about their parking lots, in the past, GSA was known for, we never sell. I don't know if they're changing their mindset, but if the post office moves out of the post office and they refuse to sell that building, I don't know who would possibly be the tenant. And so in the neighborhood of the courthouse, there are some changes going on there, both with parking and space, that may or may not be an option for us. I just have no idea.
Does anybody have any idea? I've never been in the Social Security Administration's office over
They're
there. How
already
much-
gone.
Right, well, their former space.
Yeah.
How much space that is?
It's quite a bit, third floor corner, not a lot.
I've been in there.
It's enough you can get involved in.
They have
have
room for
always
them to
enough,
operate.
But it's sitting empty.
yeah.
So you,
But if they were charging Social Security too much rent, they'd probably be charging us too much rent. I
I'm
mean,
sure they'd love to see us.
Right,
So you, but you're talking about, potentially, you're talking about, you could lease office space over
Yeah.
there?
I mean, again, all these things have to be on the table.
Yeah.
And
I
of
mean, I'm
course-
still looking at the GSA lot. Can we get that, because we're doing that.
I mean, we don't have, it's important for people to understand though, you know, if this rent really is that high, I mean, we don't have that rent budgeted. So if you're talking about, you know, you could be talking $500,000 in rent.
But even if we're talking about, say, moving the county attorney out, we're still talking about the renovation costs.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that.
it doesn't magically become a
No,
courtroom.
this gets
Right.
done.
And you've got an ongoing $500,000 rent bill that we've never had before, that where does $500,000 come out of our budget? About the only place that, I mean, you can quit funding health and human services stuff. I don't know what else, you can lay a bunch of people off, close for a day, a week or something. I mean, I honestly, 500,000 is too big a chunk.
Well, and those, again, all that on the list. We also have the 3, 4, 5 houses now across from the jail, other than the bonds some opportunity there to raise some of those buildings and putting some temporary trailers for storage or something like that, or a pod
You know,
down there.
There's something about the Iowa City ordinance in these, because people were using pods for storage, and Iowa City made it only be temporary. Now, I don't know how people get around it at the schools with the classrooms, but I'm not clear that you can keep them for long.
Yeah, no, they just
I don't know
passed
what
something.
it is.
So that'd be something that, again, as we're generating different ideas out there, you know, we do have at least that. Now, we can't use any of those houses for anything at this point.
The
At least
three.
the three are pretty structurally not
Three
sound.
on the, what do you want to call it?
North
side.
The other three are rented, fully rented, right?
Paying taxes,
I mean, you could,
yeah.
you could,
And paying property taxes.
Yeah.
you could tear them all down, but remember, tearing them down's not free.
Nope.
And then once they're torn down, you'd have to bring in
You
something
have to
similar to the
ground
school.
somehow, you're gonna-
Yeah, you bring in the temporary classroom type buildings, but then you're still going to have to, because as was pointed out, that wouldn't be an appropriate courtroom. You still have to renovate the Justice Center, we don't have the money to do that. Or you still have to renovate the courthouse, we don't have the money to do that. We probably would barely have enough money to tear down those houses and bring in temps. I mean, that would use that 1.2.
We do have dollars that, you know, are in our capitals that we were going to commit to, that we do have some leeway on.
Yeah, and in every fiscal year,
Say,
there's about $1 million to $2 million in capitals that we target projects for. It depends on the fiscal year. But going back, before you build HHS, you had this $1 million to $2 million in capitals that, which is how you built HHS without a 20-year bond referendum. So, I mean, you do have a few million a year.
we use a lot of, I mean, got a new roof that's coming here, and
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's for. I mean,
there'd be a lot of deferred maintenance, obviously, and there's going to be a lot of deferred maintenance for everything else in county government to at least address these immediate needs. And again, it comes back to how much money do you want to put into a facility if you're not gonna be in that facility? That was, again, it sounds to me, as I said earlier, it's a pretty expensive Band-Aid that we're gonna be looking at here. Now, I mean, we're talking, you know, 1.6 to $5 million to invest into the existing jail in the next 1 to 4 years, and then 4 years, you know, you wanna sell it,
Yes.
you're not gonna get $9 million for it.
so I guess, we also have regular space and storage needs conversation on the agenda. Does anyone want to take a break, and then where are we gonna go from here? So why don't we take, you know, like, until 10 till a real quick break for the restroom and some water, and then we'll come back and we'll see. I mean, we're not gonna fix any problems today, but at least we can brainstorm the list of things we need to know, and data we need to get and costs. Does that sound good?
I need to leave at 11, just so you know, I gotta get up to the range, so today's my day.
Before we break, Lonnie, I mean, do you have anything else?
No, I was hoping to hear some of the comments from the public, because there's obviously some other ideas out there that are floating around, but hopefully we can get to that before I leave.
Okay, we'll take a real quick break. It'll be like 2 to 3 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll figure out what we're gonna do the rest of our meeting.